She said, "We're better as friends," as she walked away. So I treated her like any other casual acquaintance. Months later, she started calling, texting, saying she missed me. By the time she realized what she'd lost, I was already with someone who never needed to think about it. Now she's the one asking for closure, and I'm the one who doesn't need it. 33M, met Clara, 31F, at work 4 years ago. We were both consultants for a logistics software firm. I was on the operations side. She handled client relations. She was sharp, ambitious, and knew how to make people feel like they were the only one in the room when she talked to them. I wasn't her type, at least not on paper. I'm analytical, quiet, the kind of guy who listens more than he talks. She was spontaneous, magnetic, always surrounded by people. But somehow, it worked, or seemed to. We started dating after 6 months of working together. The first year was smooth. She loved that I was consistent, the calm to her chaos, as she liked to say. We traveled together, spent lazy Sundays in coffee shops, talked about moving in. It wasn't fireworks all the time, but it was stable, comfortable. That's what I thought love was supposed to be. The small shifts started subtle. She began canceling plans with vague excuses. Something came up. "I'm just tired." She started keeping her phone face down, laughing at messages and saying, "It's just my team chat," when I asked. I never accused her of anything. I just noticed how she became increasingly presentable in public, yet emotionally unavailable in private. Noticed how we slowly became I in her language. "I'm going to this event," instead of "we should go." "I got invited," instead of "we got invited." Little things that don't break you, they just erode you. The real shift came when I got promoted. It was a good moment for me. Years of late nights, missed weekends, actual work paying off. When I told her, she congratulated me, smiled, but her eyes didn't match the tone. Later that night, she said, "I'm happy for you. But it kind of scares me, you know." "Scares you how?" I asked. She shrugged. "You're just so focused. It's intimidating. I feel like you don't need me anymore." I didn't know what to say. Because she was right. I didn't need her. I wanted her. There's a difference. But some people can't tell the difference. After that, she became distant. Shorter texts, less affection, more distractions. One night, after a week of barely hearing from her, I stopped by her apartment. She opened the door, wearing a big hoodie and the expression of someone already halfway out emotionally. We sat on the couch, awkward silence between us. Finally, she said, "I've been thinking maybe we're better as friends." The line was so rehearsed, I almost laughed. Not cruelly, just because I'd seen it coming for weeks. I asked her, "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Yeah, I just, I don't want to lose you, but I think the relationship part is weighing me down. You're such a good person, but I need something lighter." I remember saying, calmly, "Okay, if that's what you want." She looked surprised, like she expected a scene, an argument, begging. I didn't give her any. I just stood up, told her I'd respect her choice, and left. That was it. No closure text, no long emotional essay. Just silence. For the first few weeks, I missed her, of course I did. Every small thing reminded me of her. Her mug in my cabinet. The playlist she made for road trips. The jacket she left hanging in my hallway. But every time I thought about reaching out, I reminded myself, she wanted to be friends. And I don't chase people who downgrade me. So I did what most people don't. I believed her. She said we were better as friends. So I treated her like one. I stopped texting first. I stopped asking how her day was. When she messaged me about work stuff, I replied with the same neutral tone I'd use with a coworker. It was strange at first, pretending to unlove someone. But eventually, pretending becomes practice, and practice becomes peace. A month later, she texted, "You've been so distant lately. Are we not friends?" I stared at the screen for a full minute before replying. "You said we're better as friends. I'm just treating you like one." She didn't answer. And that's when I realized, people like her don't actually want friendship after love. They just want to know you'll always care even when they stopped. I didn't hear from Clara for almost 2 months after that. Silence can be brutal when you're used to noise, but after the first few weeks, I started to enjoy it. The quiet had a strange kind of honesty to it. I started running again in the mornings. Cooking for one stopped feeling sad and started feeling efficient. I realized how many of my habits had revolved around waiting. Waiting for her messages, her moods, her availability. Without that waiting, the days stretched out differently. Lighter. At work, people noticed I was more focused. I wasn't checking my phone every 10 minutes. A coworker even joked, "Man, you look like you've been sleeping again." I smiled because, for the first time in months, it was true. I didn't block Clara. I didn't unfollow her. I just stopped looking. When her name popped up on my feed, I'd scroll past it without opening. Not to be cold, just because it wasn't my business anymore. The first time she called again, it was a Tuesday night in late February. I almost didn't answer. She said, "Hey, I just wanted to check in. How are you?" Her voice was casual, but I could hear that slight hesitation, the kind you only get when someone expects you to fill the silence for them. "I'm good," I said. "Busy with work." "You?" "Oh, same. Just crazy stuff lately. I miss talking to you." That line hit me, but not the way it used to. I said, "We can talk. Like friends." She laughed softly, but there was a pause before she said, "Right. Friends." That was the first time I realized she didn't mean what she said when she ended it. She didn't want friendship. She wanted access. The next few weeks were a pattern. Random messages late at night. "Remember that cafe we loved? You'd love this movie I just watched." At first, I answered politely, then briefly, then not at all, because each message felt less like nostalgia and more like fishing. She wanted to see if I'd still bite. Eventually, she invited me to grab coffee. I said sure. I was curious, not hopeful. We met at a small place downtown. She looked great, of course, she always did. But there was something different. Her confidence had a crack in it. She started with small talk, then slid into memory. "How's your running? Do you still go to that bar on Thursdays? Do you still listen to that podcast I showed you?" It was like she was checking inventory, making sure the version of me she remembered still existed. When I didn't mirror her energy, she frowned a little. "You're really calm lately," she said. "Yeah," I said. "Peaceful." She smiled, but there was tension in her voice when she said, "You've changed." I wanted to tell her that I hadn't changed. I'd just stopped being available to someone who didn't value me. But instead, I just said, "Yeah, I guess I have." When we left, she hugged me. It was brief, a little too long to be friendly, a little too short to mean anything real. Then she whispered, "I'm glad we're still close." I smiled politely and said, "We're not. But that's okay." She blinked, stepped back, like she didn't know whether to be offended or embarrassed. Then she just nodded and walked away. After that, she texted me a few more times, lighter topics, harmless things. I answered when I felt like it. Sometimes days later, sometimes not at all. And the strange thing was, the less I gave, the more she reached. It was like she was chasing a version of me that no longer existed. Because the truth is, once you've seen how peaceful your life can be without someone's chaos, it's impossible to miss the noise. By spring, I started seeing someone else, a graphic designer I met through mutual friends. She was kind, straightforward, funny in a quiet way. No drama, no guessing games. Just simple, steady connection. Clara must have noticed, because she texted one night out of nowhere. "I saw your photo with that girl. She seems nice. I hope she knows how lucky she is." I just replied, "She does." There was no follow-up. Just silence again, the kind that finally felt earned. I won't lie. Part of me still thought about Clara sometimes. Not out of longing, but curiosity. Wondering if she ever looked back and realized how easy I made things for her. How I loved her in ways that didn't need an audience. But that kind of wondering doesn't hurt anymore. It's just quiet acknowledgement. By the time summer rolled around, I didn't even notice when her messages stopped completely. I guess she finally realized that better as friends was a one-way arrangement. Update 1. That it's been a little over 6 months since that last coffee with Clara. I didn't plan to update, but something happened last week that made me realize how far I've come and how much people like her confuse attention with connection. Clara and I hadn't spoken since spring. I'd moved forward with my life. New projects, new hobbies, still seeing the same woman, Nadia. Things with her are calm, almost boring in the best possible way. No guessing, no manipulation, no walking on eggshells. Then, out of nowhere, Clara called. It was a Sunday morning. I was making breakfast, half listening to a podcast, when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number at first. She'd changed it. I almost let it ring out, but curiosity won. "Hey," I said. She exhaled sharply, like she'd been holding her breath. "Hi, it's me. Clara." I just said, "I figured." She started talking fast, like if she didn't get everything out at once, she'd lose the courage. "I know this is weird, but I wanted to say I've been thinking about you. A lot. And I'm sorry for how things ended." I didn't say anything. Silence works better than arguments sometimes. She continued. I thought I needed space. I thought being single again would help me find myself, but I just ended up realizing how much I took for granted. You were stable, kind. I missed that. I stirred my coffee, let her words hang there. Clara, I said, you told me we were better as friends. I believed you, and I treated you like one. She hesitated. Yeah, but I didn't mean forever. I just needed time. I almost laughed, not cruelly, just because I'd been there before. People don't need time when they end something cleanly. They need options. And when those options don't work out, they call it a phase. She told me she'd been in a short relationship that didn't work out. He was exciting, ambitious, the lightness she said she wanted. Until, according to her, he ghosted her after 2 months. He said I was too emotional, she said, her voice trembling slightly. He said I was too much work. I didn't gloat. I didn't say what was in my head, that she used to say the same thing about me. I just said, I'm sorry that happened. She asked if we could meet. I said, I don't think that's a good idea. She sounded surprised. Why not? Because I'm not in that place anymore. And I think you missed the version of me that cared enough to fix things. He's gone. There was a long pause before she said quietly, You sound so cold. I'm not cold, I said. Just done. She hung up after that. 2 days later, she texted again. You really don't feel anything anymore? I thought about how to answer, whether to soften it, to offer some kind of closure for her. But closure is something you build for yourself. So I wrote, I felt everything I could. You said we were better as friends. I respected that. And then I moved on. She didn't reply. That night, I told Nadia about the call. She just nodded and said, That must have been hard. I smiled. It wasn't. Actually, that's what surprised me. Because it wasn't anger or pain I felt. It was distance. Like reading an old diary and recognizing the handwriting, but not the person. For a long time, I thought peace would look like forgiveness. But it doesn't. It looks like indifference. A few weeks later, I got a follow-up message from Clara. I'm happy for you. You really did become the man I always said I wanted. I just didn't realize what I had. I didn't answer that one at all. Because when someone tells you they finally recognize your worth, after they've already treated it like it was disposable, that's not an apology. It's nostalgia. And nostalgia isn't love. It's regret dressed up as revelation. Final update that it's been a year since that last phone call from Clara. If you'd told me back then that I'd think of her without bitterness, that she'd become just another chapter, I wouldn't have believed you. But that's what happened. Life got quieter in the best way. Nadia and I moved in together last spring. Nothing dramatic, no Instagram announcement, just two adults who genuinely liked sharing space. We split chores, we cook together, we go for runs on weekends. It's simple, ordinary, and I've learned to value ordinary more than I ever thought I would. Every so often, something small will remind me of Clara, a song, a cafe, a phrase. But it's like hearing an echo from a house you no longer live in. Familiar, but hollow. Last month, I ran into her by accident. It was at a co-working space downtown. I was there for a client meeting, and she was sitting near the window with her laptop, typing. I noticed her first. She looked up, froze for a moment, then smiled. That small, practiced smile that used to melt me. Alex, she said softly. Wow, it's been a while. I nodded. Yeah, it has. We talked for maybe 3 minutes. Polite, detached. She told me she was freelancing now, doing marketing for small brands. She looked fine, maybe a little tired, maybe just older. Then she asked, How are you? And I said, I'm good, really good. And for the first time in my life, I meant it completely. She looked at me for a second too long, then nodded, like she wanted to say something else but thought better of it. Before I left, she said, You really don't hate me, do you? I paused. No, I don't. But I also don't think about you much anymore. She smiled, a little sad, but understanding. That's fair. We shook hands. That was it. No dramatic closure, no cinematic goodbye. Just two people who'd stopped orbiting each other. That night, when I got home, I told Nadia about it. She didn't get jealous or weird. She just asked, How did that feel? I said, like finally deleting an old file I'd been keeping just in case. She laughed. Free? Yeah, I said. Exactly that. Here's the thing no one tells you about peace. It's not loud. It doesn't come with fireworks or redemption arcs. It's slow, quiet, and a little sad at first. but then it starts to feel like breathing normally again after months of shallow air. For a while, I thought I wanted Clara to regret losing me, to see me thriving, to wish she hadn't walked away. But when that moment finally came, it didn't feel like victory. It just felt irrelevant. Because winning isn't about who regrets what. It's about who heals. And I healed. Sometimes, I get messages from friends who say Clara's been more grounded lately, less impulsive. Maybe she learned something too. I hope she did. Not because I want her back, but because I don't want all that pain to have been for nothing. So yeah, when she said, "We're better as friends," she was right in one way. We were better apart. And if I could tell her one last thing, it would be this. You taught me that love isn't proven by how hard you hold on. Sometimes, it's proven by how peacefully you let go. Now, when people ask if I still believe in love, I just smile. Because I do, but not the kind that burns fast and leaves ashes. I believe in the kind that grows quietly, stays consistent, and doesn't need to be chased to be real. And maybe that's what being better as friends really means. Not staying in touch, not reliving the past, but walking separate roads without resentment. And finally feeling at peace about it.